And today, let me see, Adam and Jeremy, you guys are on. They're our co-hosts for the SIG, and just wanted to make sure I recognize them. And so today we're trying to do things a little bit differently. We're normally the SIG meets like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when everybody is really waiting and willing to go to the liquid beverages event at the WLIA. And so this is really nice to have a chance to do it during prime time and try to reach out to a larger audience. Would you please, if you haven't already, put your name and affiliation and if you want to, you can put your email in the chat box. Also, up at the top, I have a Google Doc shared if you want to put specific comments or share a link or anything else in there. Great. So let me get my screen shared here. Do. Okay, and we'll begin talking about why we're here. Let's try that one. Okay. Okay, what are you seeing on your screen?
Looks good, Jim. You just have to get into present mode.
Get into present mode. Terrific. Okay, great. Everybody can see that. Okay. So again, we're kind of expanding here. Normally we talk about LiDAR and derivative products and how things are going, and we'll do that a little bit. But the main discussion today is about hydro data, and specifically hydro data that's derived from the LiDAR and matches what's being represented with the LiDAR data. And there's kind of two big efforts that are kind of, I wouldn't say they're coming together, but they're on parallel tracks. And Larry is going to talk about the DNR program to update their 24K hydro. And then there is the USGS track, what's being called the elevation derived hydro, which is kind of a stepping stone to a more advanced national hydrography data set. And we'll talk a little bit about that first as kind of the big picture. Why we're here and why this matters is because there's these two kind of major things happening. It's really time to start planning and getting ourselves lined up so that you know, we're taking advantage of the opportunities that are arising, and you know, learning from each other and trying to come up with what Wisconsin's part is going to be in all this. And so this is kind of the kickoff for that. So that's what we're really talking about here. In my letter to some of you who got invited, I'm taking a very broad definition of hydro at this point, and we can always kind of come back. But what I'm looking for here are things that are either a major part of kind of the hydro landscape, things like wetlands and hydrologic unit boundaries, but also trying to figure out other data sets that are closely linked, if not integrated, to those other data sets. Things like land cover and land use, and structures, whether it's shoreline structures or culverts or any of those other things that have some direct link to the hydro information. And I'm really hoping here to in this 2 hours to give you the broad overview, but also to start the conversation about what these things might look like, and what, in particular, what your needs are as potential consumers of these types of things. And as I said, there are these sort of parallel tracks happening, but there's also pretty much an unprecedented opportunity to think about getting these data sets tightly integrated into things like the Build Back America projects, and all the sort of infrastructure improvements and climate change resiliency projects. All these don't come along every year or even every decade. So it really behooves us to figure out what how we can participate in these things. So before we get into the particulars of the hydro information, just a real quick sort of status update on our various LiDAR programs. And we currently have, depending on the way you count them, there's 9 projects involving 30 counties in the state right at this moment. A couple of those are FEMA projects. Some of those are with 3DEP. Some of those are co-op projects, and the most recent one is a different, where we've sort of flipped the funding mechanism, where we're collecting money from the counties and sending it to USGS, and they're doing the contracting and flying. And so of those 30 counties, there's 12 of them from 2019. There's let's see, 10 in 2020, and another 8 flown just this spring. So we're making really good progress on getting the state done. And some of these are available, and some of them are not quite there yet. So they're being worked on by USGS, and getting their quality control and so forth done. Which kind of leaves the kind of the last stage, which is depending on how you count them, 10 or 11 counties without QL2 being the 2 points per meter resolution. And these, of course, are at the top of the priority list for 3DEP funding. It doesn't mean other counties aren't allowed to apply for funding, but these are at the top of the list, and they're the ones in white on the little map there. So they're kind of clumped into 3 or 4 groups there, and it would be nice to get those done in the next 2 years, and then we can say that we've done our part to finish the state by 2023, which is the national goal. And typical costs are $200 per square mile for the QL2. And what we've been seeing in the past year is that we've gotten our local contribution down to 25%, with the federal program paying the rest of it, the 75%. And so that's helped to open the door for more folks to participate. We've also seen a move towards QL1, which is the higher resolution data sets at 8 points per meter. And we're just now starting to see some of that come in for different areas, and it's really quite exciting because it does provide a much needed improvement in detail. So, and that's coming in around $300 per square mile. So we're still trying to find partners to help pick up some of the costs for that, but that definitely seems to be the plan for the future is to go to the QL1 in at least in the next round. So any questions about that? Anything I need to explain further? Let's see. Where'd my chat box go? I can't see it. Okay.
I'm keeping an eye on that, Jim.
Okay. And
I don't currently see any questions.
That's good. That means I'm doing my job. Okay. So then I can launch into the next part here, which is even more crazy and exciting. So this is a slide. A lot of these slides are from various USGS talks on the subject. This is kind of the grand vision of where things are going. This national 3D, sometimes they call it the 4D national topography model, and it includes the traditional LiDAR, but it's also starting to include more bathymetric products. Lakes and rivers and the Great Lakes, and either through sonar bathymetry or topographic LiDAR, this is kind of like the big, I don't know, 10, 20, 30-year plan. It's kind of hard to imagine how all this is going to unfold, but that's their vision, and it's great that they are talking about it in such a grand plan. Here's another slide that I've seen. We're kind of over here between the left margin and number 1. Where we have national coverage of LiDAR and hydrography. And then there are all these other sort of fancy things where they're integrating the hydrography and elevation, starting to get into groundwater systems, engineered hydrologic systems like stormwater, integrated bathymetric, and by golly, number 6, we're gonna repeat that sucker over and over again. So that's a really grand plan, and it's nice to see people thinking about that. What you don't see in this, and what I find really fascinating, and one of the reasons you all were some of you were invited to this meeting. It doesn't integrate everything. It so things like wetlands and shoreline features, and those types of things, which in the federal world are handled by other agencies, and maybe they're going to integrate those things at some point, but they're not talking about that right now, at least soils data. So But that's something, here in our little world, we can talk about, and I think that's why I'm trying to use kind of the broader sense of what is hydrologic data here. Here's the USGS current status of the 3D elevation program. If you were to look at this map like 2 years ago, it'd be like half done, and it's really jumped to almost 3/4. And you can see that we're one of the holes in the eastern part of the U.S. And we have some things remaining to do. So what is this elevation drive hydrography that they're talking about? And I think, some of you have probably run into elements of this through your, work with, deriving watershed models, using tools like ACPF or eval or Snap Plus or ArcHydro, any of those things where you're pulling data out of the LiDAR and turning it into things like stream networks and catchments and other fun stuff. And so they're proposing that this is kind of where they want to go next. And and if you look at this little chart over here on the right, you can kind of see where they've been with the NHD, the old medium resolution 100,000 scale stuff that was pretty typical for decades, and then starting to get into the 24K, and now we're talking about this EDH stuff, which is obviously more local scale. 1 to 5,000 scale or better. And just so you know, there are some specifications out there for acquiring the data and putting attributes on it and really getting started. So there's some links to that. And just some of the different things that they're trying to code into the data. Of course, very similar to the NHD, but of course they're deriving this from starting with the LiDAR topography. And yeah, again, here's something from the quantum folks, running ArcHydro, defining your streams, creating break lines, looking for where the digital dams are in the DEM, and fixing those and developing automated flow lines, which then they edit into the NHD configuration. So again, just kind of the steps that they're taking, starting with the LiDAR data, creating the line work, and now we're talking about a much higher resolution version of that. One of the things that a lot of folks here in Wisconsin have been working on is the issues with culverts. First identifying them and mapping them and using those in various models. There's been a lot of damage from the frequent flooding that we've had in various parts of the state. So there's a real tremendous interest in culvert inventories and being able to work with FEMA to get those replaced and somehow modeling how they can be upgraded so that they won't fail as often. This I just threw in there because I love this word that they've coined, geomorphons. I had never heard of that, which is really too bad. You know, curvature and other things. But these are tools that they're using to quality control their new EDH line work, and they're using these geomorphic functions to do some of that work. And I just thought that was pretty fascinating because we've got of course we've got a lot of interest for those kinds of things within the state as well, mainly relating to the culverts and things like bank full conditions and what's the land use and the culvert catchment and so forth. So anyway, to kind of finish up here, there is this there is a NISGIC EDH project which we are a part of, and we're listening as we go. They've just started this, and mainly it's trying to get the states familiar with the EDH concept and how this program is going to unfold. And of course, as a bunch of states in NISGIC, we're very much concerned as, gee, is there going to be money for this to help us do the mapping and so forth. So that's always a real big topic. The other benefit of being a part of this group is there's learning what other states are doing, and this is an example that was in there in the April webinar. New Jersey is redoing their stream networks, and they have these, obviously they have real interesting problems like tidal mud flats that have to be incorporated and into this very elaborate data flow model. So just real quick, again, I wanted to expand sort of what some of the talking was about today to things like land cover and wetlands. And as an example, I grabbed some of the NOAA CCAP slides. NOAA has a program to look at coastal areas, develop a land cover and a land cover change product. And you can see that a good deal of Wisconsin is covered by that. So that's a good thing for us. But it was traditionally a 30-meter Landsat based process, and now they're really talking about 1 meter and much more detail. And so here's an example. I'm not sure where this is. This is one of Nate Harold's slides, but obviously in an urban area, and zooming in, and on the slide on the right, you're looking at individual buildings and streets and sidewalks and other things. So getting it down to that level so that your hydrologic analysis can take stormwater analysis can take advantage of that higher resolution data. And just a quickie, I think the slide on the left is kind of the old 30 or 15 meter data, and then showing various upgrades to that, a higher resolution version in the middle, and then a higher resolution version with a lot more impervious surface classes. So that's kind of where they're going, and you can see from the difference between the left and the right side, how much more definition there is, particularly of smaller features. And again, what kind of what my big aim here is in talking with you all is, beginning the start of a business plan to kind of get us ready for these things. And of course, you know, those opportunities might be very soon, depending on how some of these bills in the legislature and the Congress are going. So we kind of want to be ready, and we kind of you know, want to figure out what everyone is doing. And that's really the purpose of it today, is to really sort of identify you all as participants and stakeholders, and really kind of start to get an idea of what your needs are looking like. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Larry. Let's see, how do I get out of here? And Larry, are you ready to talk at us? While he's doing that, are there any sort of questions? Yeah, those specification documents are breathtakingly complex. I totally agree. We had the two people that developed those on one of our talks, and oh my, it was quite interesting. Larry, where are you? Oh, okay, there he is. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, take her away.
Great, thanks, Jim, and thanks for organizing today. Appreciate it, and to WLIA as well. As Jim introduced, I think, you know, with all the LiDAR updates that have been made and the improvements in that data, we really have an opportunity to improve our hydro data sets. So I'm going to go through some of the DNR plans for updating our 24K hydro data. So as part of that, I'll give a little background about our 24K hydro data. We went through a needs assessment exercise last year within the DNR relating to 24K hydro. So I'll share those results and describe our pilot project that we're planning. So I think most of you are familiar with our 24K hydro data. Basically, it's our foundational geospatial data set for hydro that's maintained by the DNR. And of course, the NHD is an alternative, and now many counties have developed their own hydro layers as well. So 24K hydro, it was developed from scanning 1 to 24,000 USGS topo maps. So those were topo maps developed between 1947 and 1992. So that's important to keep in mind when we start discussing its accuracy and characteristics of it. As far as the development of 24K hydro, it started within the DNR in the mid-90s, and since then, since about 2013, it's been in a maintenance cycle. So just kind of minimal maintenance being performed on our 24K hydro data. And some of the details about what's represented in it. There's over 50,000 water body identification codes within it. And those are abbreviated as WIBICs, I guess. And some of the attributes represented within 24K hydro are listed there. And just within the DNR, we have a lot of dependencies on the 24K hydro structure, and this just shows kind of the different databases that are linked to it. Okay, so in about 2019, we were thinking about these issues and what's next for 24K hydro, I guess. And it always starts with, well, we need to make a business case for updating it. And so we decided to start with a needs assessment. And this is really an internal effort. We interviewed about 25 staff within the DNR about various 24K hydro issues and gathered their feedback. We also looked at the regulations that apply to 24K hydro as well. So I'm going to run through some of the things we found. And one of the main uses of 24K hydro is for nutrient management planning. And of course, that impacts many acres of land in Wisconsin, over 4 million cropland acres. This is a screenshot from Snap Maps, which is a tool developed by UW-Madison and is used in nutrient management planning. And I think a lot of the issues that I'll describe pertaining to 24K hydro have been identified as farmers have worked when developing nutrient management plans using these data and identifying some of its inaccuracies. And I think we have to keep in mind the scale of 24K hydro. It really wasn't intended for this scale of use, but when you look at the details of how 24K hydro lines up with aerial photography, it's easy to see many spatial inaccuracies. So when it comes to regulatory compliance, a lot of farmers and others are confused that we're providing this data and expecting them to comply with it. And as part of nutrient management planning for the CAFO program, and there's also biosolids land application for wastewater. That's another business area within a DNR. They reference intermittent streams. And definitely we have a lot of issues within 24K hydro where it's not clear why some of the intermittent streams were identified, and the landscape has changed over time. And the result of that is when we're using 24K hydro as a base is that it leads to incomplete nutrient management plans and a lot more field work to verify what is really on the landscape. And again, relating to just changes over time, especially for ponds and smaller water features, a lot of those weren't captured in 24K hydro. So this is an example showing Shoveler's Sink, which is just west of Madison on Mineral Point Road. You can see it's not represented in 24K hydro. And as some of our DNR programs, we have what's called the Lake Book, which is used for fish stocking, management, various purposes. So one of the needs we identified was updating the acreage used in the Lake Book. And also, the inaccuracies of hydro leads to problems with identifying sampling points and additional rework. And just a screenshot showing mud and fish lakes in Dane County and how what's represented in hydro doesn't match the water body extent of those features right now. One of the complicating issues about delineating hydro features is just how to define them, where they start and stop, and some of those definitions aren't very clear for even what defines a lake, flowage, slough, and other features. So I mentioned all the different databases within the DNR that reference 24K hydro, and a lot of those aren't tightly linked to hydro, so they might copy features from hydro, then use them separately in their database. So that presents some challenges if we start thinking about updating hydro. How are we going to account for those changes and those dependencies in other databases that aren't tightly linked? So that's a quick overview of some of the business needs we identified. And again, that was really focused on internal DNR needs. We didn't really, you know, cast out farther to other agencies or groups for information. So I think following up on that, we identified a need to update hydro, and our plan is to follow up with a pilot project in Kewaunee and Manitowoc counties. So the scope of the project will include requirements gathering, refining our technical methods. So the DNR wetlands team, I saw Chris Knoll, Calvin, and Chris Smith are on the call. They've developed a protocol of how to map hydro. So we might draw on their work and look at some of the other methods of delineating hydro. So we have quite a bit of work just to figure out the process of how to best map hydro. Our intention is to map hydro at a scale of about 1 to 5,000. And one of the key requirements is just maintaining the WBIC and hydroid reference keys from existing 24K hydro. And that is important for all the dependencies on 24K hydro now for our programs. So we got a lot of work to do. And I think one thing that's great to see on this call is just a variety of different organizations on the call. And so how we might interact with NHD efforts and county efforts, I think we need to look at that as well. Like if we're thinking of updating hydro statewide, we don't want to duplicate effort in doing so. So I think we have a lot of opportunity to kind of seek out those partnerships. Within the DNR, there's been some discussion, could we set up some grant programs to help support this work? So if we could get county involvement potentially in assisting with this hydro update effort. So I think that's what I had to present. I just wanted to kind of sum up, 24K hydro is a foundational layer. As far as the DNR, we've identified many business needs that support replacing it. And we hope this pilot project that I just described would set the framework for a statewide 5K hydro update. So I'd welcome any questions.
Any questions for Larry? Thanks. That was a nice overview of how deeply integrated it is within the agency.
So Larry, this is Fred Yowsley. When you said working with counties, could you elaborate on what it is that you would be looking for from counties? I mean,
I think
the devil's in the details, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think some of the things I thought of is we have limited field staff. So if we want to ground truth things, I think that would be something we would like to explore working with counties on. If counties have mapped their own hydro, maybe there'd be a possibility we can integrate that data into what we're doing and maybe cost share that in some way. I think those are just really ideas at this point, but I think we do want to kind of network as much as possible with counties, other agencies to make this happen, because we have limited resources too. And we got to leverage everything out there that we can. So yeah, so I think there's more details to come. I know you, as you said, the devil's in the details, but
well, I guess
more conceptual.
Sure, and that's fine. I mean, that's a work in progress, and that I'd be open to having those discussions as things develop. I guess it's important to share too that a lot of the various county ordinances do reference the DNR hydro for like shoreline zoning and buffer distances and things like that. And the current data set is woefully inadequate.
Right.
I mean, there are streams going in directions that don't exist. I mean, and we're creating, requirements for landowners that, they may or may not have to comply with that. So we've been using it as kind of a general reference, but we've been slowly using our own, developed off of our LiDAR and aerial photography verification and things like that. And then also enhancing it with orders that come from the DNR on whether a stream is a waterway is considered a DNR regulated stream or not. So, I would be all for more detail. The 5,000 has me a little concerned. I would be looking for an enhanced data set if counties can provide better geometry to use that and not dumb it down.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that input, Fred.
Just a reminder, if you haven't put your name and affiliation in the chat, please do. There's 43 of us, and which is way better than our normal 4 o'clock LiDAR SIG. So we definitely want to hear who's here. We've got a few people that I know have to leave around 2 o'clock, and I'd like to poke them a little bit. The DNR floodplain folks, Betsy and Chris, are you still on?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Betsy, you're the program manager for the floodplain mappers and engineers. Is that correct?
Yep.
And so we would like to start with you and ask what's your initial reaction to this? Is this type of data important to your program? And if not, then what is, and what's the status of the floodplain mapping? How could that be improved?
So we did work with Larry initially on looking at the 24K hydro update. It would be helpful for us to have a more accurate representation of some of those stream center lines. Several of our maps show our stream center lines, what we call our profile baselines, actually going outside of the floodplain. And so it would be helpful for us. In those cases, those are areas where we are not remapping. So we wind up just showing it as is on the map. If we're remapping it, we'll correct it ourselves. But if it's existing, we'll show it on the map that way. And it would be nice to have a better representation, and especially in terms of getting our stream miles and doing our modeling. I think that in terms of some of the other parts of this presentation of what would be useful, I would kind of ask Chris to step in here, because some of this would be useful for the actual engineering and modeling. So he might have a better answer to that.
Yeah, and again, the discussion that we had, this is Chris, by the way, the discussion we had with Larry was, that the 24K hydro being more precise, I think, is something that is really helpful for the engineering. We get a red flag flown at us if our stream center line goes outside of the floodplain, which has happened. So we have to go back and correct that. So if we had that correct from the beginning, it helps not just with us not getting a red face that it's it looks bad, but it helps with the precision of the engineering as well, and figuring out stream distances and whatnot. So having that is really good, and it's not just for the modeling, but not just for the hydraulic modeling, but the hydrologic modeling and you know, burning the terrain you know, through culverts. So like you said earlier, that we don't have these artificial dams stopping our flow from going through there. So you know, we want that to occur in the correct location. So that's the big benefit for us for the engineering, is that more precise and accurate 24K hydro.
Okay.
And certainly, as you and I have talked about, Jim, too, the QL2 LiDAR is something that triggers funding from FEMA for updated flood maps. So continuing to get the state wide up to date with the QL2 LiDAR is important for us.
Okay. It would be, as we kind of move forward with kind of the planning documents, it would, one of the things we should probably have in there is kind of what is the status of the floodplain mapping program, and you know, just a map showing where you're working and where you think you'll be working, and do you have the LiDAR and the other data sets that you need for that. So is that something we can work on?
Yeah, absolutely. You just you would like a map of, is a map helpful or a spreadsheet? What's most helpful for you
Oh,
guys?
probably both. You know,
Okay.
just to kind of, you know, give them names,
Sure.
but
And you would like to
also
know
see.
the projects and the LiDAR availability that we have, and then what other data we have? Is that what?
Well, what more to do with what you need, and
Okay.
you foresee as a need in the future scope of things. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I know Chris and I did earlier talk about too that there used to be a statewide raster data that had all the Mannings and the roughness coefficients in it, and it's out of date, and so we don't use that anymore. That could be helpful for the modeling as well.
Oh,
So that would
okay.
go with the soils and land use.
Land cover, yeah. Okay, let's talk about that. Yeah, that's a.
And this is Fred Yalsey with Dane County. I just wanted to pipe in and say that, you know, floodplain mapping is a big deal for the counties, especially a lot of counties have very old mapping. And if we're making an investment in LiDAR data, it makes it a lot easier to go before our county boards and say that we are updating the floodplain mapping with this data, instead of just saying we're going to make some really cool and pretty maps. To have that ability, and I will speak for Dane County, when we went before the board, and with Jim's help in getting some of the grant funding and things like that, to show that we were going to update all of Dane County's floodplain maps, that made it a no-brainer for us. But there are counties throughout the state that have been waiting for years to get their floodplain maps up and up to date, and still waiting, and then turning around and being asked to do LiDAR projects and finding either that they didn't make the loop, and then their data is too old, or the spec wasn't met, so you can't use it. There needs to be some better coordination so that when we put in this money, that we can turn a product out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of counties have approached us at DNR with that exact question. You know, if we get new LiDAR, will we get new maps? It's never a guarantee. That's always helpful. FEMA will not fund counties that don't have LiDAR. And right now they are targeting counties that have QL2 or better LiDAR. So it's never a promise that you will get new maps immediately, but you won't get them if you don't have that. So that's, if that helps push the funding at all.
And also, I want to point out that you know, you don't have to wait for FEMA to do it. There are counties that are doing it themselves. Of course, you have to have that funding available, but It's just like any other typical letter of map revision process. So you don't have to wait for FEMA to update your maps if the county, community, or a small area, whatever, you think that the floodplains are terrible in one area. Anybody can submit the data to FEMA to get it revised. But of course, there is that cost there, and most people want to wait for FEMA to pick it up. So I don't want to. I don't want you to think that it's your only option to say FEMA fix our maps. I mean, anybody can update their maps if they have the data and the funding stream.
And I understand that. Then I want you to join some of these counties and talking to their county board about coming up with that money. I mean, everybody's budgets are tight, and that is a huge, especially for some of these smaller counties. There's a need for it, but that kind of budget talk just doesn't go anywhere.
Yep, I understand that. I totally understand that. I'm willing to say that, help out with that discussion at any point. There are a couple counties who have done that or are looking at doing that now. So, and I think some of them that I actually saw on this call right now. So, it's not it has never or will never happen, but you're right. There is a cost associated with that, and it's tough to find that funding.
Yeah.
Certainly, though, I mean, if there is a need and there's LiDAR, we do, give FEMA a list of our priorities to map. It's not always in our hands what they choose to map, though. But if there is a great need and the county, can provide us with that documentation of what the need is, that the maps are just extremely out of date, they don't represent what the ground conditions are at all. Certainly, we can use that as leverage. If FEMA has been focused on updating the counties that still had paper maps first. We're almost through those counties, but so now if we're moving on to remapping counties that have digital data, but really just out of date digital data or use really out of date topographic and terrain data, then that would be certainly leverage for us to get that funding from FEMA.
Good point. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. That was a good back and forth. I know that's important to a lot of people that have bought the data. Let's anything else from Betsy or Chris and or to them? Anybody else have a question or
This is
answer?
Jeremy out of Gamey County.
Sure, Jeremy.
More engineering. It's been great as out of Gamey. I can't remember when we updated our D-firms, but having the overbanks being, extracting cross sections, things like that. Is the DNR looking at the sensitivity of being able to use potentially LiDAR to define the channel geometry as well for at least approximate studies and or maybe even detailed studies? Is that work being done?
I can take that if you want, Betsy.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, we currently do that. For detailed studies, AE zones, we generally require on-ground survey. I mean, that's kind of the difference between detailed and approximate studies is getting a surveyor out there and surveying the land. For in-channel and for bridges and culverts, the overbanks, we use the LiDAR for detailed studies. For zone A's, it's all LiDAR. We don't use survey. So that's how we do it, and that's how we did it in Outagamie County actually. For all those zone A studies, it uses the LiDAR for the channel determination. Okay, so QL3 is accurate enough then for approximate studies for channel? That's a Betsy question. I would guess at this point moving forward, no. So I assume what you're saying is Outagamie County was not QL2 data. Yeah, it was the original stuff, like with the other 7 counties. It's just, I know we had to hire a consulting engineer to survey and cross sections and stuff as well. So that's why I ask. It'd be nice to, or see how that's advancing. Yeah, so
I'll take that. Not
okay.
Not necessarily that QL3 is not good enough. FEMA does have their own accuracy specs that we have to follow. So QL3 data does fall into that, but moving forward for future funding, they want only QL2, they're only looking at funding counties that have QL2 data. That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that there couldn't be a LOMAR or revision using the QL3 data. But for a new countywide update, yes, they would like to use the QL2 data. It doesn't help our case to get the funding if you have QL3 data. I wouldn't say no, but it doesn't help. It makes it less of a priority for FEMA.
And we've gotten newer data since 2 years ago. And so we're beyond that. It was just, as an engineer, there were limitations to what we could do with limited groundwork. And so it sounds like maybe I'm just looking for any documentations you have that talk about using QL2 or QL1 for channel geometry.
Well, I don't know, Chris, if there's any more detail specifically about the channel geometry, but I can certainly send you the specs that are required for LiDAR for FEMA projects.
Yeah, there isn't anything that specifically calls that out for channel geometry. It's just what we've used for approximate studies. I mean, that's kind of the definition of an approximate. It's, it's using LiDAR rather than actual survey. So I don't think there's, as far as I know, that there's no documentation or specs that say, you can use this for H&H modeling. So.
Okay, great.
So just really quick to follow up on that, if you want to send me a quick email, I'll put my email in the chat and I can get you the LiDAR specs that FEMA requires.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, send that to me as well, and I'll put that in the notes for the meeting so that we can send that to anybody and everybody. Okay. Thanks, guys. Let's see, on my list here. Let's go to Brandon up there. He's got his video on, so that's a good reason to pick on him. Brandon, you want to introduce yourself and what's your connection to all this and what's your thinking?
Sure. So, hi, everybody. My name is Brandon Crumody. I'm a physical scientist with NOAA's Office for Coastal Management, serving as the Great Lakes Regional Geospatial Coordinator. And as Jim pointed out at the top of the call, I'm located in Duluth, Minnesota, and cover the entirety of the Great Lakes region. So there's actually quite a few different threads, I think, Jim, that I'm connected in on. Obviously, LiDAR is a big thing. We do host all of the topo-bathy LiDAR that's been collected by the Army Corps of Engineers along the shorelines of Wisconsin and the other Great Lakes states, as well as the other coastal states. We do provide a voice from NOAA's standpoint about where we'd like to see future LiDAR work. And so I just made a note, Jim, Douglas County is your remaining coastal county that's still SQL2. So I'll be putting that forward as a nomination from NOAA's standpoint. But then we do quite a bit of work actually in the water as well. And as I mentioned in the chat, you mentioned the Geomorphons. We do use Geomorphons as part of our benthic habitat mapping. That's another piece that I'm tied into. I guess the one update I was going to provide during this call, Jim, and I've got to leave at the top of the hour here as well.
I just saw that, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. And we did wrap up a multi-beam data collection between Bark Point and Sand Island along the Bayfield Peninsula there, where we are implementing the Coastal and Marine Ecological Classification Standard. That's an FGDC standard for benthic habitat mapping. And so we're in the process now of actually taking all that data we collected and turning that into a mapping product moving forward. And then I guess the last piece that I'm tied into as well is the Coastal Change Analysis Program land cover data sets that Jim pointed out in his presentation. As Jim said, we are making a move towards 1 meter products across everywhere where we've currently been doing CCAP mapping. And we do have a strong interest in partnering with the states on providing that 1 meter product moving forward. I was just about to send you a text, Jim, here. We do have new cost estimates. Now that we've been doing this 1 meter product development, for a couple of areas. The cost is starting to go down as we start to find vendors that are capable of generating these at a higher speed and more accurately. And so just for an example, CCAP, we create a higher classification schema than what's provided through the NLCD. It does have that coastal focus, so we break out the wetlands in more detail. And right now, it looks like $20 per square mile is a full high-resolution CCAP data product that we can develop moving forward. So previously, I know, Jim, we've had those conversations in the past. It was quite staggering. It was actually sticker shock when you look at how much it cost. But with the advancements in the technology, and then secondly, like in the state of Wisconsin there, where we do have QL2 or better LiDAR data, that is actually one of the inputs that we use for the high resolution mapping as well. Getting back to Betsy's comment about Manning Zen, it was great to hear that because we actually do use land cover data to generate a surface Manning Zen for some of the hydrological modeling that we do in the coastal areas as well. So that's where I'm, I guess, plugged in, Jim, in a quick rundown before I have to head out.
Yeah, I just saw that. I just happened to call on you, and then I saw that. But I think one of the things that we are going to need is probably a whole nother session on wetlands and coastal wetlands and the shoreline products that you're working on, the hardened surfaces, and just to get people familiar with those things. And so we thank you for coming, and we'll invite you back.
I just pasted a link to that hardened shorelines data set that you mentioned. And if people do want to take a look at that data set without having to download anything, I will paste that link here as well. So
okay, very good. All right, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Take care. Okay, so it's 2 o'clock. We've got a whole hour. Do you want to take a 5-minute break? And I know I do. Let's meet back here at 2:10. How's that?
Sounds good, Jim. And then there are a few questions stacking up in the chat that we could maybe take on
Okay,
after the break.
great. Yeah. Okay, we'll see you at 2:10, please. Just lost somebody. Okay. Is everybody back? Hard to tell. Okay, well, there's Joe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, good. Before we launch into the next group, I'd like to introduce Dave Nail from USGS. Dave, are you there? Dave.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can we see you?
Maybe. My internet is pretty bad.
Oh.
So I usually don't turn on my video.
Are you at home? There you are.
Here I am.
Yeah, good to see you.
I'm at home.
Okay. So everybody, this is Dave Nail. He's our USGS mapping liaison, and you know, Ron Wenzel was our last liaison. Dave, you're just temporary, is that right?
That's right. There is an opening for a liaison in actually 2 positions opened up in the Great Lakes area, and those are getting close to being filled. So
Oh, okay.
My temporary assignment will probably be ending here in maybe another month.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's pretty soon.
A lot of what you all are a lot of all of what you all are talking about is happening, you know, all over the country.
Right.
Being involved with NISTIC, I'm sure you're aware of that. But so I'm a little bit familiar with, you know, very similar things going on in Missouri, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, developing synthetic stream networks from LiDAR, and then attributing those networks and creating a hydro product. One of the reasons I did see the comments from several folks about our EDH specifications and the complexity that they contain. And I'm not an expert on them yet either. So hopefully at some point I need to get up to speed on everything that we're doing. But we have several pilots in work, EDH pilots, where we're taking, you know, the synthetic stream network all the way to an NHD product. And so that's occurring in Alaska, in Texas, and there's, I think, North Carolina, and another location, I'm not remembering exactly. But the whole point of really is we hope to, just like we are doing a LiDAR broad agency announcement where we offer grant opportunities and/or we support GIPSy or contract funding for LiDAR, we hope to do the same with hydro. And so we anticipate having a grant opening probably not next year, but the year after. I think we'll
so that's
have
pretty
that.
soon.
And so that's one of the reasons we need to have these specifications down, is so that when that data comes in for review, you know, we have a specification that we review against, and the contractor will need to use that specification as well. So we have a defined product. And so, yeah, so we do have these pilots, and we do have some of the, I don't know all the contractors, but we do have contractors. Some of the very same LiDAR contractors are also doing the EDH pilots.
Right.
And so, yeah, we're trying to get it figured out ourselves before you all get it figured out, so that we can. We do want to produce our NHD from LiDAR instead of having these silos of independent products, you know, elevation independent of hydro. We want to combine those two. We are very interested in wetlands. We use the Fish and Wildlife NWI layer in our US Topo product. We, I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, we've never gotten to the point of including that in our NHD database or in our model, NHD model. And maybe because some of the NWI it also has some fairly complex attributes. But we use it, we stream it, so you can bring it into an ArcMap session as well. So it's a valuable product for us. We just don't have it in the NHD yet. I'm not sure. It might always be sort of a linking database that we use with the NHD. But you all are bringing up some good points, and I'm glad that, you know, your session is recorded, so I can continue to refer back to what's happening in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And for the next liaison who takes over.
There we go. Yeah. Well, we're gonna miss you. We'll be curious to see who we get. And so you said there's two. Will we be with like Minnesota and Michigan, or some other configuration?
Yeah, probably. Mm-hmm. Right. I don't know exactly. You're probably correct. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. Illinois and Ohio or Indiana are in there too somewhere.
Okay,
So
so Great Lakes.
I haven't heard the final word yet on how they're
Yeah.
going to divide it all up.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And so yeah, 2 years. Do you think the process would be separate from the LiDAR, or would there be opportunities for combining the two? So instead of buying a separate LiDAR product and a separate EDH product, maybe that would just be an add-on to one or the other. Any
I
idea?
think you're right. Eventually, I think you're right. Eventually, it may become a single grant opportunity. Right now, initially in the very beginning, it's going to be two grants, one for LiDAR, one
Okay.
for producing NHD.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for that information. That's very helpful.
Sure. Thanks.
Any questions for Dave? So I'm hesitant to do this, but I think it's time to jump into the wetlands. And who wants to go first? We've got a couple folks from our Madison U.S. Fish and Wildlife office here. I think I saw them, Mitch and Luke. Is that right? You want to say hello? They're still on break.
No, I'm sorry. I was entertaining my daughter here. She asked me a question. This is Mitch Ferguson with National Wetlands Inventory. I'm the data steward for the national data layer. And we've worked with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources in modernizing their workflows and getting them up to the national standards. They've been doing stellar work, and they've got a lot of projects going on. Luke Worsham is the regional coordinator that's been working with them in regards to quality control to ensure that their data set is up to national standards. Is there anything else you wanted to know from us?
So what's the what's kind of the outlook for NWI these days? I know funding has been a challenge. What's it looking like?
Yeah, it's still a challenge. It's an underfunded layer. I think nationally, it's coming in at under $4 million a year. And that just pays salaries for the most part. And there's minimal cost sharing opportunities, but there are occasionally some opportunities to do some cost sharing. But we really rely on stakeholders and partners to provide the information. We work with them. We provide the quality control, the data maintenance, the stewardship of the data, distribution of the data. But as far as data creation, we're really relying primarily on stakeholders. There's some larger players out there. BLM is a big funder. State of Wisconsin is actually funding some data collection, which is fantastic. Minnesota recently funded, the entire state over a 8-year effort or so. That's now complete. Michigan is funding a good portion of the southern lower peninsula of Michigan. So there's a handful of states that are really stepping up and recognize the importance of this data set and funding that. And we do what we can to work with them, but we can only really provide staff services on our end and hosting services and tools, analytical tools, quality control tools.
Okay. So let's see. We've Chris Smith is on, and Chris Knoll. Is Calvin also?
Yes.
There you are. Your box lit up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, we are, well, Chris Knoll and Chris Smith are both working on NWI projects right now, and I'm funded through coastal, so I'm working in coastal areas. So hydro is a byproduct basically of our process. Our goal is to map wetlands first, and hydro flow lines, for example, are a byproduct that we create as part of the process. It was part of the pilot project to see if it's, if we could include it in the steps, and it's easy to do. It's easy to create, but there's other work involved when it comes to conflating the WBIC information, which is what Larry Cutforth mentioned earlier. So anyway, so every time we create a riverine polygon, we do create hydro flow lines, center lines, as part of the process, as well as fluctuating line work through open water, that type of thing. So, but we basically use the layers available. We use leaf off imagery. If we can extract hydro that way, we use the LiDAR. If we can extract the hydro from the LiDAR, or we do the old traditional clicking the center line and buffering the line. So
Okay.
in a nutshell, that's kind of our steps. But we do go to the counties first when it comes to working on an area. We try and find better hydro data if they have it. I just received data from Door County, for example. We use the break line data if we feel it's worthy, but it's a lot of times it's incomplete. A lot of times it's only perennial features, and we end up having to create the line work ourselves because it's incomplete. So we basically start with whatever sources we can, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Okay.
If Chris Knoll or Chris Smith want to pipe in, they're welcome to.
Yeah, hey, this is Chris Knoll. Most of what Cal said is nuts and bolts what we're doing. It's just, I guess important to keep in mind that, the NWI standard includes surface waters. So to that end, and to the end that we are kind of pushing our process to kind of go down to like the 1 to 2,000 mapping scale, we're capturing basically all intermittent and perennial streams that we can find, either as that, polyline that's been buffered out or independently mapped banks. I could actually, screen sharing that hasn't worked too well for me lately. I could try to share my screen of a current mapping effort in the Rat River of Forest County. But I mean, as a byproduct of that, we basically have a full stream network. The thing is, it's not been, as Cal said, it's not been conflated into a network. It's like the low-hanging fruit. So we have the lines. They have some basic topology components where they're not overlapping, etc. But it's not hydrography data. It's not a network yet, but it's pretty low-hanging fruit that's there. We've also, again, got the water bodies. In some cases, they're subdivided according to different lacustrine and palustrine surface water mapping zones for NWI standards. But again, it's like we have about 20 some Huck 12 watersheds published and, mostly finalized, unless somebody tells us something's wrong somewhere. But, there's updated flow line data there and polygon data that it needs conflation, but it's very low hanging fruit.
Is there a workflow that would say produce the stream network first and then you guys would consume it?
Sort of. I mean, sometimes we do produce a stream network like as a backbone, and we build out the polygons around it. I would just emphasize though, like, automated flow lines are not necessarily cheap or good flow lines. And so the whole way through, our goal has been to produce new wetland map data that's like, very accurate and efficiently. And so along the way, we've been balancing, how can we semi-automate this process versus when is it easier just to draw the stinking flow path? Because even in a 4 watershed project area, I spent about 100 hours mapping surface waters and wetlands across about 50,000 acres. And creating these flow paths was at most 10% of that job. So, I think at a certain point, if you have a production mindset, you just you start producing these lines and you get a good sense of like how long is it really taking. And again, like these automated methods, they're not necessarily cheap. They're not necessarily good unless we have some advances in technology that, I'm sure will be coming down the road, but I just haven't seen, I guess, the real world applications yet of, automating these flow networks in a really high quality way.
Okay. What else? Any questions for these guys? Go ahead.
This is Mitch Ferguson. Just a comment. I think, there are opportunities for efficiencies in data collection by combining both wetland and NHD's type hydrography data collections at the same time. There's efforts underway in a variety of states, a large effort in Alaska to do these simultaneously. It's proving to save money by collecting both at the same time, recognizing that any given area, it's gonna cost more to do a project because you're collecting 2 different data sets. But there are definitely efficiencies that I think are being seen, and I think there's possibility for even increased efficiencies, as Chris alluded to. The data's collected, you just have to conflate it in many cases.
Okay, are any of those in the Midwest or somewhat close by? I mean, Alaska's nice, but it's
that's where it's out west, the Southwest Alaska. But I think there's opportunities with the work that Chris is working on.
Okay.
Yeah, and just add, like on my screen right now, I'm just sharing. This Rat River, Forest County, 50,000 acre project area. So these green lines are just updated. Extremely high accuracy. In a lot of cases, we're using different ArcGIS processes to directly calculate the center line, like from the polygon. And so it's efficient, and these little blue dots are where we're capturing what look to be spring outflows in these wetland complexes. So yeah, so I mean, this is an orphan data set that essentially we've produced as a byproduct from wetland mapping, and it's kind of waiting for that conflation.
Yeah. Okay.
Process.
That looks great. Okay, so kind of the same question for the NWI guys. What's the funding outlook for the program, and how do we sort of look at this as a way to, as Mitch was saying, look for opportunities.
Is this a question for
This is for
level or Wisconsin?
Yeah, well, start. You've already sort of thrown the slow pitch out there. I'm interested in Calvin and Chris. How can we help those guys to cover more territory, or find opportunities for funding that'll help move the program along?
Well, it's a balance of workload versus bodies, as who know the work, and funding is an even bigger nightmare for Wisconsin, let alone on a national scale. There's talk about, we had a meeting just the other day about funding for the program, and because of COVID and other vacancies, we're lower on the totem pole than I was hoping. So right now it's the funding. Like Chris is working through NWI. They funded the program for the areas that they're working in right now, and I'm funded through coastal. And right now, I don't see many other opportunities right now available.
Okay. Well, Kyle and Aaron, are you guys still available? Let's see. I don't see Kyle.
Yeah, I'm here, Jim.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, you're the nice picture. Do you wanna toss your ideas in at this point? Oh, there's Erin. She's the big E. Okay. What do you guys see as you know, how we can move things forward with the wetland mapping, and also integration with the hydro stuff?
Well, I guess just a little context. So we're supporting Ashland County, and maybe Brittany and Clem from the Regional Planning Commission could chime in. But we're working under a FEMA-funded project to do a risk assessment in the Marengo River watershed. So that's using the existing wetland mapping and the potentially restorable wetland layers to reference to looking at the condition of the stream. So looking where channel incision, gullying, ravine erosion, and things like that are disconnecting floodplains and wetlands from the drainage network. So the biggest challenge has been the absence of the hydro condition DEM. So not having a complete break line data set. So we have spent a considerable amount of time just compiling the base data and trying to get that. And Clem can probably speak more to the challenges that we've had, but we're starting to turn a corner and using the Geomorphon toolbox to help with the characterization of the valley bottoms and getting a better mapping of the drainage network. And from there, so if that would be my number one recommendation, especially statewide, is if there can be investment in getting that higher resolution LiDAR data, and then, making sure there's a companion breach line, digital dam data set that can then be fed into the wetland mapping, and then integrated functional assessment. It needs to be done both with the wetlands and the floodplains. Typically, it's another challenge when the wetlands and the floodplain pieces are kind of done with different specs and with different goals in mind. And often, it's for regulatory purposes. So, the FEMA project is mostly about identifying those non-regulatory opportunities, whereas their restoration that can occur upstream of the culverts that have been washing out. And with those incomplete data, it's been difficult to get that up and running, but should have more ideas here soon as we start to get that's a lot of that base data uploaded, and we can start interpreting and seeing how that feeds into the risk assessment. So that's a real quick overview and where I see some of the biggest need.
Okay, so you're hopeful that in the future more data will be available that will improve the ability to perform those types of assessments.
Yeah, we need the base data to perform that,
right.
The watershed scale, risk or hydrologic assessment. I mean, it's very difficult for the counties, which was mentioned very early on, or the regional planning commissions to do that work. So anything the state can do to help make that a more efficient process and help with the standardization of the data, and start thinking about ways to produce data that can be used then in like FEMA's benefit cost analysis, and having culvert inventories that help catalog and being able to pull that information in ways that you can do that, some of the analysis to tap into hazard mitigation money, and there's potential to unlock transportation money as well.
Okay.
If I could just add, thanks, Kyle. This is Erin. I think Jim for us, a lot of it boils down to being really interested in collaborating with this group, Kyle on the more technical side, but then organizationally on the application side, because, we're just seeing so many, there's so much need and so much interest in, from multiple angles. And so, as we have this conversation here today about who can do what, or how can we get, increase investments amongst ourselves, I think we're also really interested in sort of piecing together the package of sort of why the investments in these kinds of data sets are really in the interest of the state, for use by multiple sectors for solving multiple problems. So, Kyle's talking about emergency management and transportation, protection of transportation infrastructure, but there's so many others. And I think that's where this coordinated discussion is really needed. We know it's hard for agencies themselves to advocate for themselves, but with so many people from the counties here, and others, maybe there's like a sub working group that sort of talks about how we make the case for getting these baseline data layers more available statewide, because everybody needs them.
Great. Just tell everybody what you do, Erin.
I'm Wisconsin Wetlands Association's Policy Programs Director, which means, among other things, I'm a registered lobbyist. Doesn't mean I have any particular influence, and plenty of examples of where things we think we're getting done run amok, but just sit in a different seat with a different lens. You all are doing all the really heavy lifting from the technical perspective, and we just know that it's hard to convince policymakers, even administrations sometimes, to spend money. And so that's a role groups like ours and Wisconsin Land and Water and others can play in terms of helping make the case that sometimes you got to spend money to make money, or spend money to save money in the long run.
Okay.
So Erin, this is Fred Yowsley with Dane County, and I think what I'm hearing here is that we have there's a need, there's a lot of interest, but who has the money? Right? I mean, that all of this stuff is going to take a lot of money to get done. And has there been any discussion about developing a pilot project, a high value, high risk watershed, and having everybody put all of their interest in developing kind of a pilot project, and then doing what you were just talking about, demonstrating kind of those things? Because what we need to be able to do is now show all of these different groups are working on kind of the same effort. And how do we then go after federal DOT money or state DOT money? Or, I mean, you tell me, you probably know all the players in this where we could potentially, and maybe there's some that you or others haven't thought of yet that we could be tapping into, because, I mean, we can keep Cal and his group on life support for 100 years, but it's going to take 200 years based on the money I heard that they're working on to get just the whole state done.
Kyle, do you want to tell them about your project? I think that's there are watershed projects that are going on in a number of places. Kyle mentioned his Marengo project. I think Jeremy, you guys are in the Fox are doing a lot of that. You really pitched the nice slow pitch, Fred, because I think that's in the near term. I think we've got enough of these activities going on. There's the sort of basic data thing happening, but there's also some folks doing some really neat analysis. And I was going to try to get Matt Dybel on here next, because from a technical side, Matt's got some really interesting things going on. Matt, are you available?
I guess, Jim, what I'm really, I mean, it's great that we're all doing interesting things. Everybody's doing interesting things, but I think there needs to be a kind of a coalescing of our efforts, and then working with lobbyists like Aaron and others to start making that pitch for more money, or get in that hopper of applying for those federal grants. And if it requires a state match or something like that, then to make that pitch. I mean, I think we're all guilty of this, right? We're so focused on doing the job, and they're all really important jobs, but we have to start, playing the politics to get the money to make it happen. And I'm just looking at some of the stimulus money and things that are starting to show up federally, and I'll let the federal players speak to potential there. But I think what we're missing here is we're pulling ropes in different directions, and I think we need to start kind of working all together and from a state and help these programs out.
No, I think that's a real good way to describe what we're trying to sort of get launched here. And I don't disagree at all. I think that's all part of the. Actually, okay, to kind of answer your question directly, I think I need to call on Mike Fries, my boss. And Mike, are you available? Let's see if he's tuned in. Because he is on yeah, there he goes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in. Sorry, I wanted to put my headphones on before I started talking.
Can you kind of answer Fred?
Well, I think to Fred's point, which was good, is it would be great to find a highly vulnerable site and concentrate effort collectively on that. I think it makes good sense, and it fits well within the state's administration's priority as well as federally. So the only money that I have at my discretion, somewhat discretion on air quotes, would be the coastal dollars. And, I'm working with people like, Kyle and Aaron in the Lake Superior Basin, working with Jim and Melanie on our projects of special merit. But yeah, I think that, Fred, it's just like everything with geospatial. I mean, trying to make it relevant to folks and make it more than just data. And show how it can benefit the protection of capital investments in public and private property.
Exactly.
Transportation infrastructure, is a great example.
So I guess I'm going to press it. Is where are we doing that then?
Well, I think that the Whitkey project that Jim and Melanie are doing with SCO in the Lake Superior Basins is an example. I think that the work that Wetlands Association is doing in Ashland County is another. One place, the driftless area. That would be a great place. If I had available to me money that I could put forth there, but to your point, I mean, there's other people that could,
Well, I guess that's my point, Mike, and I don't want to. I mean, there's some other presentations and stuff, but I think what we keep talking about, and this is at every level of government is kind of the sticking point, is that we have these projects and we'd like to have the money. We need to make some presentations about to get the money. It's not so much about hoping that it will be made available, but doing something.
Yes.
And if there's we all have that tough situation, right? We see the need, but it's hard for us to lobby for something, right? I mean, Mike, you and I have spoken about that, but we have lobby groups like Aaron and others that could be taking that, and we just have to provide them that model to then make the pitch. And I see making the pitch to organizations like the Realtors Association and others, when you start talking about homes at risk or mitigation processes to lessen risk and protect private property and all of these things, there's some natural advocates out there. I think we just are doing an awful job of not engaging that, and we missed an entire budget cycle now, where they're discussing the next 2 years of budgeting, and that's going to be resolved here, and we keep wringing our hands and talking about, gosh, it would be nice. Well,
yeah, on another level, I've been a part of that, working with on shoreline erosion and along the Great Lakes. And it wasn't just the realtors, it was the lending institutions too.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you going to provide somebody a 30-year loan to build a house that might not be there in 5? And right now with the influx of infrastructure dollars, you want to make sure that you're applying those funds in a strategic and sustainable manner. You don't want to build something that's going to be gone in a few short years. And I it's unfortunate to miss the state budget. You're right, but I think that we can still strike with on a federal level when it comes to infrastructure, and that's the message that I've I've been trying to say, to share on a national level. But you're right.
Yeah, I guess I think, as Jim was saying, we need to prepare for things, coming down the pipe. I think we need to build that, either that 5-minute elevator speech or that 2-minute elevator speech, or that quick presentation that we can provide so that we can go after federal funding. I mean, I guess to some degree, Mike, your office is perhaps, best positioned to go after kind of that money, or at least make us all aware of it, with Jim's involvement and your involvement with different federal players and things like that. I guess I'm hearing all this great stuff, and we at the county level have a need for all of the stuff that everybody is working on, as well as the state agencies, and everything comes down to money. And I don't know where we're really fighting really hard to get that money, or at least I'm not seeing it. And I'd like to, even if it's leveraging the WLIA and I mean, there's other groups out there. How do we start making, instead of just talking about it, how do we make that push?
Yeah, so I'm looking at Aaron's suggestion, and putting together a smaller group, and I think that the wiki group and the infrastructure group might be a good people. Shortly, I'll have a stronger connection with a former colleague at WEDC. I think that they could be good for us, and definitely WLA Lion and others, Counties Association, Realtors Association. So yeah, we'll catch you, and I'll catch up on this, Fred, and I appreciate you pushing me on it.
Yeah,
so.
I would love to talk more about this, because I think that we see these presentations all the time, and I'm so impressed with what everybody's doing, but I want to start using the data. And then Calvin can I've been bugging him for the last year, and then we have little areas of Dane County that are done. Well, I get it. I get it, but it's like we have some real needs that have to be addressed, and these long timelines just don't work.
Yeah. I'm gonna as moderating here, and with 9 minutes left, I really do appreciate the where that's going. It's almost too good. Okay, it's the next thing is how do we turn this this direction into, you know, getting deeper into the weeds. There's obviously technical things that, you know, GIS people like to talk about, but there's also these sort of policy and funding things. And you're right, Fred. There aren't there haven't been a lot of sort of questions, you know, discussions that have reached this far, and we don't have a lot of time if we're going to take part in some of these you know, these Build Back America things. So yeah, there, you know, I see two tracks to this effort, and one is kind of the standard plotting. Let's make sure we get all our stakeholders lined up, but then there's also kind of like the commando strike force that we need to have the, you know, the elevator speech ready, because we're probably going to need it, you know, next fall sometime if some of these things do pass, you know, Congress. Yes. So I think there's both, and I hate to say it, but it's almost an all hands on deck kind of thing, and leaving it to you know, just one or two people or one group, you know, we all have something to contribute, and right. That's real. You know, we've got such good projects going. We've got a lot of knowledge. We've got a lot of need that we can document. And I think, you know, with the help of people like Aaron and Mike, we can do our darndest to get it, you know, get it in front of the right people. And just as another example, you know, Larry is starting a wiki group, the climate change group, and focused on geospatial data. And so we're going to interview the other people in the other wiki groups, and that has an audience, the governor's task force. So I think you know, we can hopefully make some noise about, you know, you're gonna do all this stuff with you know, planting 75,000 million trees, but where are you going to put them, and you know, what's going to be the best way to do that. So just as an example, so I really do appreciate the where this is going. It's almost too perfect. Is there anybody else? Is there anybody else who has something they just have to get off their chest? I know we didn't get to Matt, we didn't get to Brittany, we certainly didn't get to members of the audience. But
I've got something, Jim.
Yes, please, Steve.
This is Steve Mall from the Wisconsin Geological Survey. We've done multi-county projects and township-sized projects and regional projects. We may have data for the things that you're doing or the thing that you're interested in doing. So if you're going to form a proposal or some kind of project explanation to a funding source, contact us. There are 6 hydrogeologists working here, and I have all the same problems you guys have about non-hydro-enforced DEMs and culvert mapping and floodplain mapping, and all those things go into groundwater modeling as well.
Yeah.
So if you have questions about how to do something, where to get money, that kind of stuff, we may be able to possibly team with you, because if we've already done something in your area, it's a foothold into the next series of whatever grants or project grant proposals or whatever. So contact us and ask questions, and we might be able to point you in a direction where there might be a pile of money we could use to get something done.
That sounds great. That's why we invited you all. Uh, anybody else here? Craig from NRCS, you got anything you want to add?
No, not really, not at this time, Joe.
Okay, okay.
Jim, this is Jeremy. I would just add that I think it would tying any infrastructure money that comes to fruition is the key time to hopefully we can tie evaluation of the watershed, not just making culverts bigger, right? Or something like that. To fix a perceived problem without really knowing the impact you're going to have downstream. And I think some of our work with looking at water storage and retent, like all those things should be part of infrastructure, not just the physical culvert getting replaced.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Who does that?
Yeah. I could see it happening. Well, at least we'd have a policy in Wisconsin, right? Or we're educated, like Mike, I like your opinion. You brought up that point, but like, at least we're advocating for that's part of the work plan, right? If it's been analyzed, great. Let's go start shovel ready projects. But if it hasn't been analyzed, we still have great projects that are, you know, in the wings, but we need to get the analysis done so we're making the right decisions for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So yeah, as far as next steps, and I think my goal here was to hit the hornet's nest and see what comes out, and I think we've got a couple places to go, both on or along funding, along with getting the message out, working on the technical side, and doing some of the identifying where the projects currently are, and how maybe we can leverage some of those. There's some really great projects starting in the Fox, going into Green Bay. There's a really lovely story map and other things that describe what they're doing, and you look at the background material, and it's all GIS based, and it's all at a very sort of medium resolution. So you got to ask, if you're going to do all this water quality work in the Fox Basin, how are you going to get down to the farmer level, how in the field level? So there's obviously a lot of work there that needs to happen for those kinds of things to get going. And you can point that at many places. So we will be in touch, and we will try to get to the rest of you. I do apologize that we didn't get a lot of input from folks that just showed up and wanted to be a part. We do appreciate it, and we'll probably try to do something in July. And if you're interested in being on that mailing list, by all means, put that in the chat. Put your email in the chat, or just contact me or Adam or Jeremy or Larry or Mike. You get the picture. Okay. Any last words? Thank you, WLIA. Thank you, Zach, for hosting us, and I will turn it back to you.
Hey,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks everybody for joining the LiDAR and Elevation SIG today. And just a plug here for the WLIA Spring Regional. These SIGs are just the kickoff. So starting next week, every Tuesday and Thursday, there are presentations happening. And I'd encourage you to check into those. I put a link in the chat, and I think it's $40 for members and $60 for non-members to sign up for these presentations. Take them in over the course of the rest of the month. I'll also mention that this was recorded, so eventually we will have a recording posted somewhere for people to access and refer back to. Otherwise, I think that wraps it up for today.
Okay. I'm gonna stay on for a few minutes if you don't mind, in case there's any follow-up.
Yeah, I can keep the line open for maybe the next 10 or 15 minutes, sir.
Yeah, great. That's perfect. Here they all go.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Zach. You guys have a great day.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Yeah, Jim, it's exciting that there's finally movement again. It feels like, I feel like it was stagnant for so long.
What movement is that?
Your movement, or just starting to tie this, the 1 in 5,000, all those things are all just things that are exciting that kind of haven't been there.
Well, you know, I look at stuff like you know, the what is it, the NDTI stuff that Sarah's working on with the DNR folks. You know, that ties into this, and there's just so many things going on.
Yeah, it's exciting work too. It's crazy how relatively abundant that satellite data is becoming.
Yeah, I would really love to learn how to do what who's the young guy from DNR that's using the Google Earth.
Luke.
Yeah.
Can't remember his last name, but
yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. But
and it's fully tied though to like the curve number stuff and all that. I hope we're not developing these, at least with the DNR, within a silo, right? As long everybody's got the same, or could at least knows about the project, so they can start using that for their future projects.
Yeah, yeah, I really wish we had gotten Matt Dybel, because he's doing some of that stuff too, and I don't know if he's, you know, talking to the other groups.
Yeah, we talked to him briefly about, I can't remember why anymore. Everything seems to go so, this last year went so fast.
Yeah. Yeah, he showed me he has a little online thing for a crowdsourcing your culverts.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and the hydrography is colored by stream power index. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around that.
And some of that SPI tools are built into the eval tool set, and we do some of that as well.
I think he's also writing his own tools, and they're on a GitHub thing, so you know, anybody can use them.
Right, that's why I'm excited to maybe get like the band back together so people can start learning about all these small things everybody else knows about, right? And just to get it back out there again. That's where Matt helped us. I think we had some issues with some of the scripts and eval when we were running them for some of the watersheds, and he was able to help with that.
Okay, well, cool.
Yeah, we've had to rewrite a couple pieces of it because they're breaking with the new versions of Esri coming out and ArcHydro changing and things like that. So we've run into that.
Oh, yeah. Craig Sermon, you remember when they switched I can't remember what it used to be for making contours, but Esri switched the order at which it gets done. So it broke the Python script and back in the day type stuff. So yeah, Adam, I guess that was old battle scars come up when you say stuff like that.
Wow. Well, I maintained some AML code for decades, longer than I should have.
But yeah, tying the culvert wiki, that Melanie, like all that stuff should be part of any infrastructure. I hope the state can advocate, you know, the departments can advocate for that anything that gets replaced, we should be identifying what's all in that area that contributes to it so we can start building full data sets.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, Jeremy, you've got one of the best culvert inventories, you know, around, but you know, your county has invested so heavily from multiple departments and actually going out and shooting everything versus taking more of a remote sensing approach just to try to get the full inventory. And then once you have the inventory, use that to attribute the culvert